Yo guys, what is going on? It is Invin here, and today what I'm going to be bringing to you guys is everything you need to know from the latest New World developer update, which they did drop a video for just a couple of hours ago here. What I've done is I've watched through this video in its entirety first, just sat and watched it. Very, very interesting video. I would certainly recommend that you go and watch it after this one if you haven't already seen it. It is a very, very cool insight into what the team is doing over at AGS. And then I also watched it back for a second and third time and kind of made some notes on it, picked up on a few of the most important points for you guys so that I can bring you kind of a condensed version for those who don't have the time right now to watch this until you can actually get to watch the full thing, because there is a lot of context and kind of justification of why they've done certain things, certain features in that update video, so it is worth watching. But this is going to be like a quick update, all of the most important things, so you can get them all in one quick place. Now before we jump into this, of course, please do remember to subscribe if you are new to the channel, as it really does help support me and my content here on YouTube. We're getting very, very close to 13,000 subscribers, and I would love to have you guys here as part of my channel community. So if you wouldn't mind going down and subscribing down below, that would be amazing. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So the first thing to say is the background gameplay you guys are seeing is from one of our most recent wars on the Vega EU server. It's just going to be a bit of background gameplay, to be honest, for the moment, because I'm going to be talking about the video and the features that were in the video, and I'm going to go over the facts that they talked about, the upcoming events, upcoming features, what they're focused and working on, and then I'm going to move into a couple of things at the end that I noticed throughout that might be potential clues to later updates and content as well. So firstly, there was a big focus throughout on the bug fixing, and they said that January is the content update. Obviously, we know we've got the Umbral system and the Expeditions, the brand new mutated Expedition system coming out with this one. But then they said that the February update will solely be on the bug fixing and balancing that they've been wanting to do, rather than any new content, which should fix a lot of the major bugs and issues. But with that, they said there would also be a PTR to test this, which makes me think that a lot of the major stuff that we've been seeing, complaining about, etc. for the past while is going to be fixed in February, which is a massively, massively good thing. And I'm excited to see what features they do bring along with that in terms of what they're improving, what's getting updated, and what is getting fine-tuned. Now, January Mutations update is being monitored, and potentially in the future, we could see more accessibility to things such as the mutated tuning orbs. They kind of tuned into that, saying they know that we want more accessibility and less time-gated content. They've said that the mutation orbs and regular tuning orbs is something that they're constantly taking feedback on, looking at how they can improve the accessibility to those in-game. And obviously, through the PTR, I've done this a lot. This was pre-recorded from a few days ago, if not a couple of weeks ago now. So by the time we get to the end of the PTR, some changes may have taken place. But generally, they said they've been monitoring that throughout, including when it goes into live, so we could see some potential fixes going forward there as well. Now, they also said that PvP balancing is ongoing as always, but they are now getting to a place where they're going to do more little tweaks and see how that affects the overall meta and, you know, kind of the overall gameplay of players, how each person uses that and each type of player uses it, and then continue from that point if the change is successful, rather than doing big tweaks. But obviously, if they need to, for whatever reason, they can still go in and do that. But they are looking at more playability and little tweaks just to give it, you know, a bit more chance to settle in, which I personally think is a really, really good idea. A lot of it as well was said to going to be driven onto the PTR first, which does make a lot more sense, because obviously then we get a chance to test these updates before they do come out, so we can kind of see if it breaks the weapon, if it makes the weapon trash, or if it kind of just fixes the spot that we were complaining about beforehand, which is always a good thing. Now, they also reconfirmed the Blunderbuss would be coming and said that it would be the next weapon that we see. But as we know, February is not going to be a content update, so my earliest guess for that is March. But I think we will get some more information on that shortly, whether it's going to be in March, April, or May. Hopefully towards the closer side of the year, because I think that would be something a lot of players are excited for. But obviously we want it to be fine-tuned and correct before it is dropped. So I'm happy to wait there if that is the case as well. Following on from the Convergence Winter Festival event that they did throughout Aeternum, the AGS team do want to add more random encounters and open world kind of situations, types of things touching on like the enemies that could be roaming around or potential bosses and events alike. Nothing specifically was mentioned in this interview and in this kind of video, if you like, to us, the players. But what they did say is that there's lots of excitement and enthusiasm around it, and it is something that we're going to see development on continuously. And from what they were kind of speaking, the manner they were speaking about it, there's lots of stuff in the pipeline to potentially come into the game very, very soon to do with open world encounters and mobs that we might be seeing, but they are wanting to fine tune that and get it to a really, really good place before it is dropped as well. We know it's not going to be February, but March, potentially again, we could be seeing some sort of stuff along the side of open world. Now, Mutations numeral system obviously was talked about a huge amount, with that being the January update that we're getting next. They constantly mentioned that they were monitoring this and would have been throughout the PTR, which obviously in the time they recorded that video is in the past tense for them, but is currently current tense for us. The monitoring throughout that, and obviously we saw that with the changes from 590 gear score upgrades from the 600 that they initially started with, so that's really, really good. But they also said that they're going to monitor the mutations themselves to make sure that there's no combinations of boss enemies and mutations that are just impossible or extremely hard for no reason without the rewards being really, really high there. So they are going to look into that, and if we do get any absolutely nutty bosses that are like, for example, Hellfire is really, really good with certain bosses, they're just going to tune those to be relevant and actually killable in the particular mutation that you're in, which I do think is a good thing as well. So that's something that they're going to be looking for. Mutations have been created with the intention of the rewards being, quoted, very valuable for players, which is the justification for the orbs. They kind of said that's why they're using mutated orbs. That's why we've still got time-gated content there in a sense. But obviously with it being in the shop, they've tried to eliminate that a little bit. However, it is still on a weekly cooldown for both the shop and the craft, which for me, particularly on the early doors when you might fail these a few times, seems a little expensive and a little too spread out. But, you know, we'll kind of see. Obviously, mutation orbs are universal, so you can use them on any mutated expedition. So you could save these up for a particular rotation or for a couple of weeks. But personally, I want to get dug straight into this, and I would prefer it if I had more access to the orbs. But we'll see how it goes once that releases. But one thing that we can take from that is watch the new perks / the new craft mods, because, of course, if these have been created with it in mind, very valuable rewards for the players, and that's kind of the justification for all of how the system works, you probably bet your bottom dollar that these new exciting perks are going to be pretty good, and they're going to stay pretty good for at least a good while, because they want them to be one of the best things so that people will grind for them. So I would say they're probably going to be best in slot. I've talked about these a few times: the 15% attunement buff to damage on your weapons every 2 seconds, and the stacking resistance once you get hit by that particular elemental type of resistance to damage is going to be super, super good. So I would keep an eye out for them. I'll give you guys an update as soon as this does drop, this update, whether that's actually going to be, you know, best in slot or not. But as I'm predicting right now, until we get the official live notes, I'm going to say yes, they're probably going to be best in slot. So certainly keep an eye on them. Certainly try to get them early doors. They will be valuable. Then they also mentioned PvP arenas. Now, they talked about this briefly with references to 3v3 and 5v5 arenas, with the team saying that they really enjoy the small-scale PvP a lot, and that is something that we could see in the future, but maybe not too soon, although they did say there's stuff in the pipeline. The quote from the developers was that they absolutely want to support small-scale PvP, and we do have some things coming down the pipe, so high chance that arenas will be coming very soon into the game. As we know, not February, maybe March, April, May time, and you know, they're going to be in some form to start off with, whether it's just one mode, particularly maybe 3v3s, 5v5s, and then they expand that. They said they're going to expand the systems, so potentially matchmaking in the future is something that was mentioned, and, you know, kind of systems around that to build into how those arenas would work. But this is really exciting, because small-scale PvP is something I really enjoy, and something they mentioned when they said it as well is it never seems to be a 3v3 in open world. You'll always get people jumping in and getting in the mix, so knowing that you've got a specific 3v3, making your builds and your sets based around that and testing people's skill levels. If this comes out with something like a leaderboard alongside it so people can see, even if there's no ranked mode to start with, I would like to see a ranked mode included with this further down the line. But initially, if it's just something with leaderboards so it's a bit of fun, that could be something truly amazing for New World, and I really would like to see that come sooner rather than later, as I do think that's going to be a massive thing that people will really, really enjoy. Now, they also talked about more casual versions of wars and invasions, so more players can be involved. I really like this idea, and I think it'd be great for practicing to bring newer players up to speed with how war tactics work and invasion tactics. But obviously what we've got to consider there is kind of what the rewards would be, how they would get to do them. So would there be a practice queue mode for it, like OPR, or would it be something more along the lines of they're just going to put certain wars that are restricted gear scores or something like that. I don't know, but it's something we could see. I personally think it's going to be a queue mode like Outpost Rushes, so they queue up for a war type situation, 50v50, no faction locks, just randomly places 100 people in, and they have a war type situation, random roll of your defense or attack. And I do think that would be really cool, again, if they had some leaderboards in that, so you could see who was the best, who was getting the most wins in it, that sort of thing. So there's some incentive for those higher hardcore players to push that, because it is a 30-minute event. It's quite a long time. But also so you can see the newer players that are coming up, maybe those that haven't been picked up by the top-end companies or whatever else you might have on your server. You could see some players start to grind that out, get really good. And then, of course, you know, you might see some almost like sniping for teams, trying to get people to join them because they're a good war player, that sort of thing, which could be an interesting element as well. Get people experiencing the wars. Seems like a very, very good thing. Now, they also talked about being too strict previously with time-gated content, and of course, with the introduction of these, we've got some more with the mutated expedition orbs, but what they've said is they're moving away from that as much as they can, obviously making the mutated and the vanilla orbs purchasable from the faction shop when this update drops is going to be a positive thing, but with a weekly lockout, like I said, personally, I feel like that is still too little amount. I think it needs to be maybe three orbs per week purchasable, and then 1 or 2 craftable, so you can make 4 or 5, because as I say, even when you get to those level 10, you're probably not going to complete it every time until you've got it absolutely nailed. And to be able to get there right now, you'd need to get the same party of 5, crafting an orb, so they'd all need to be stone cutting level 200, and they would need to buy one, which isn't too much of a problem. 10k faction points, we've all pretty much got that. But then they would need to complete each level of mutation on the first try just to be able to get to level 10 with the same group, which is quite a commitment and quite difficult to do. So whether that's intentional or not, we'll see. But personally, I would hope to see the crafting cap increased to at least 2 or 3, and the purchasable cap to match that to 2 or 3, maybe even 4 or 5, so that we can potentially try out some of these ones and aim to get to those higher levels without being stuck down the bottom for the whole time until you can soar through the same one that you had maybe 6 weeks ago, which could be interesting mutation kind of combinations there. So we'll see how that goes. They said they're monitoring it, so we won't jump the gun yet, but that's something I would like to see kind of maybe adapted before we get the release. Then they also talked about mutated orbs being universal, which I mentioned before, so you can save them up if you do want to. I like the idea. Again, kind of annoying because you don't really want to save them up for multiple weeks if you're only getting 2 per week. But if you're not able to play as much in a couple of weeks, and then you can do maybe 3 weeks time, you're going to have more time, you can save them up and keep hold of them, which is a good thing. So there's half and half there. Some people might like that, some people maybe not. They then talked about bringing more PTRs for pretty much all of the upcoming updates. They did say that despite February update only being kind of to fix bugs and to fix issues, they are still going to run a PTR test period for that, which is a really good thing in my opinion. Gives people a chance to test out these fixes, see whether they've worked properly, of course, and then, you know, kind of stress test some other areas that may have cropped up as a result of these fixes, because when you alter one bit of the code, the other bit changes and can have a knock-on effect. So iron out any little kinks that we've got there, which I think is a really, really good thing. And they have said that they are going to have all of their PTRs will be at least 2.5 weeks, but maybe more for some of them for each of the updates. So a couple of weeks into each month, we can expect to start to see the next month's PTR coming out. So we can pretty much get new content going all the time, something to be excited about. Even with the February update, like, we may not see particularly game content, but we are going to see fixes, which we know are on the way. And I think that's a really good way of being transparent with the community, not leaking things too early, but giving everybody something to look forward to as well. And a month in advance is a very, very cool way of doing it, and it does build a nice bit of hype around the game. I really like that. Now, they also touched on the patch notes, saying about the missing ones, where a few of us were like, have they stealth nerfed things? Have they changed things secretly? Basically, they said they just messed up on that one. They didn't have it ready in time, released it without the patch notes, then released some patch notes, not all of them, and then came back with the full ones at the end. Again, with this one, they've done it in a couple of sections for this last PTR. They said ideally going forward, they want all of it ready. So from day one, the PTR releases, we've got all of the notes ready. And so with that, the whole community can see exactly what is going on. So I think that is a really good idea, so that we can all fully see what is going on, full transparency, and then we can kind of test those things in the PTR, stress test specifically anything we don't like to see whether it is broken or not, and then give them feedback in time for them to make changes before that's fully released, which again is a really, really good thing, and something you don't see from a lot of game companies. So really, really cool from them. Also, we saw there that they are considering lower level expeditions becoming mutated, but what they're kind of assessing is the difficulty, the length, the challenge, the number of bosses, etc., to make them equal to the late game ones, because if they do decide to do it, obviously they're not going to want to make particularly the early doors ones like your Amrine Temple, really easy even when it's mutated, so players will just all flock to that and save the keys for it and not do the rest of them. So they are looking at that, and maybe they'll tune them up, who knows, but they are considering putting those into rotation in the future. They're also looking at second server transfers, and that wave will be coming very soon. Essentially, they're waiting for the housing persistence issue. That's what's stopping transfers and individual character transfers at the moment. So once that's been fixed, we'll see the second wave of server mergers, and then a second wave of tokens going out, so you can all expect to see a second character transfer token within the next couple of months, hopefully on the shyer side of that, so maybe in a few weeks time. But next couple of months is kind of roughly what they said, as soon as possible, but they also said they don't want to rush it if there's going to be any issues. So hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months we'll see that come out. We can get those transfers going so that any players who aren't happy with the merger that they've had, or they want to try out a new server, or whatever the case may be, maybe it's play with some new friends, whatever, then they can actually do that. And of course, any of us that split off before or got split up before with the previous transfers, we can all reunite on one server, which is really cool. So that should be coming very shortly, and again, I'll bring you guys an update when that goes live. As they said, they will update the forums with that, so that's something to look out for very shortly. They also said that weapon swapping currently is not a bug. How it works, you know, we've got the delay, the kind of, it doesn't work fully. It's not a bug. They want there to be a weapon swap delay, but what they said isn't working correctly at the moment is the fact that it isn't queuing properly. Once you press the button, it doesn't always happen. So that is going to be changed in the next update or the upcoming updates. So you will be able to queue the action. So if you get CC'd, as soon as you come out of that, the weapon will still switch like you'd press the button for it to do so, but there will still be a slight delay with animations, because of course that's the way they want the combat to play out. You can't just instantly cancel swap, because of course that would lead to all types of things like, you know, the machine gun, mage staffs coming back and all that kind of thing. So it is intentional, but they are going to look at smooth and streamlining that, because I think that's really important. So that's something I'm really excited to see. A lot of the times in wars that prevents you from getting kills or escaping, so if you are able to do that, particularly if you're a live staff user or a paladin like myself, being able to get that staff out in situations where you need it is really important. So that's super good. They also said that they have a strike team working on desync issues. Sounds pretty in-depth. Strike team. It sounds almost like they've got a force going at it, which is really good. Essentially, they're working on all the desync that we've been seeing across the servers between client and server-side issues. Lots of things go into that, so it's a big job, but we should be seeing some major fixes to that over the coming weeks and months, which is really cool. And I like the name strike team. I like that they've got like almost a combat team going in to fix that, so that's cool. We should see that fixed shortly. And then finally here, we've got mutations maybe a little bit early, according to the team. They think maybe they've released them a little bit early because they pre-planned this before the game was fully released, and in hindsight maybe the gear score increase and such was a little bit shy. I personally think it's at a really good time, because I think that a lot of players that are at endgame do want that extra content, but there is a lot of mid-game players or just early end-game players that are not quite at the level where they're getting that 600 across the board or 590 as it currently stands and can push for the Umbral system. But if it's going to be at least another month before we see content again after this, with February just been bug fixes, plenty of time for people to catch up and understand where they need to be, what they can do, and start to push those mutations. So as it stands for me, I think it'll be really good for the community. It will give people a lot of stuff to try out and do, and we can always see how it goes from there. There's no rush with future content, but I personally really like it. Now, my opinions on this, they did talk about certain things in the video, but one of the most important things, which isn't actually something they spoke about, was the backdrop and the stuff they had in the background. And you'll see from the screenshot on screen now, they actually had daggers and pistols in the background. So maybe this is just for the vibe and the atmosphere, but it could also be a clue towards upcoming content or future weapons. So keep your eyes peeled for those. If we see some sort of like bolt action pistols almost, or lock action pistols and some daggers, you know where to see them. They are in the background, so that could be pretty cool there. And then also they talked about PvP missions and, you know, the progress of those, how you capture territories and such, maybe not being that interesting. I personally like that they take a long time, but I would like to see something where maybe we could see some sieges of the forts. There could be almost like a little activity around that, where if you want to do it, you have to fight the fort, and those that are online can defend it, and it's almost like they can use ladders and things to get in, or something along those lines, which could be pretty cool as well. But that obviously is going to be later down the road. Also with PvP missions, something that could be cool is getting something like a cart of resources and having to physically take that cart as a number of players from the settlement all the way to the fort in order to gain some influence, and that could be a repeatable quest. It would require people to guard it, because obviously if the enemy faction or the defending faction destroys it, then you will obviously not get that cart's influence. And then of course, if you do have people to defend it, that could be really, really cool as like an open world, moving an object across from one place to another down the roads. You must stick to the roads for the cart to work, etc. And then it would give people a good chance to fight it out and actually something to contest. So something along the lines of physical objects could be the way I would go with it, but it's not something they said they've got a priority on, and I would agree. Bugs first, but further down the line, that could be really, really cool. So I've tried to keep this as brief and kind of as snappy as possible to give you guys all of the updates and the insight into how this works, to keep you all on top of the ball. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please do be sure to leave a like on it down below. And like I said at the beginning of today's video, if you are new to the channel, please do make sure to subscribe to the channel down below as well, as it really does help to support me and my content here on YouTube. Other than that, guys, as always, I will leave the video linked in the description, so if you want to check out their original video, I would highly recommend it. Loads of cool stuff in there and loads of context to what I've been saying in this video. That'll be linked below, so you can go ahead and watch that one as well. And other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your time, and I will catch you again tomorrow with a brand new upload. Take care, guys, and peace.